The following program is for informational purposes only. Cryptocurrency is a new science, so do your homework before putting money on the line. Today is February 11th, 2014. Welcome to episode 83 of Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the digital economy and the future of money. My name is Adam B. Levine. I'm the editor-in-chief at the LTB Network, and today we're looking at the future, then the past, and then the present in that order. Ryan Deming is a member of the Law and Policy Committee at the Bitcoin Foundation. He joined me last week to talk about the recent FinCEN rulings that clarified some things for miners and wallet software developers that have been open questions for years. Then, we're back in Miami for the North American Bitcoin Conference, courtesy of Steve Malagotti's Spectacular Recordings, and we've got a mystery speaker who, well, here's a taste.
This is a man who has done more for alternative currencies and foundation work than just about anybody else on the planet, and he has suffered greatly for it, both personally, financially, and in just about every other way you can imagine.
That story starts in the 50s and ends just a few years ago. It's a perspective not to be skipped. And finally, we arrive in the present, where in another LTB first, we're happy to end today's episode with the sounds of live Bitcoin trading, as it took place during the first Satoshi Square London. Enjoy the show. Joining me today is Ryan Deming. He's a partner at Monte Rosso Investments, and the last time we spoke, he was running for a seat on the Bitcoin Foundation's board. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Adam. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So one of the things that stuck out from your candidacy to me compared to some of the other ones is that you actually have a lot of experience not on the cryptocurrency side, but on the commodities trading side, and you've worked really closely with regulators for a number of years in that capacity, right?
Yeah, that's right. So in our industry, the commodities industry, the NFA, which is a self-regulatory organization, works quite closely with CTAs and so commodities trading advisors and commodities pool operators. And it's sort of an open dialogue where they audit you semi-annually, biannually, that is, about every 2 years they audit you. And so we've learned, really how to work with regulators and what that process requires, the sort of open-mindedness that it requires. That's what got me interested in looking at joining the Law and Policy Committee. So that's how I'm, I think, primarily involved now, at least publicly, is in the Law and Policy Committee for the Bitcoin Foundation.
We've been trying to prep this interview for, I guess, about 2 months now, and it just has taken a long time, but the timing has been actually quite good, because recently there was a pair of FinCEN, that's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, rulings that were a little bit out of left field. They hit on January 30th. I haven't had much of a chance to take a look at them. Have you had a chance to take a look at them, and can you help me understand what's going on?
Yeah, I have. We've actually been expecting them, at least the first ruling, what they're calling R001. We had been in touch with Russ Smith over at Atlantic City Bitcoin. He is the gentleman who originally requested the ruling. And so we were aware that it was coming, just the timing just worked out that it, landed right before our scheduled call.
There's been a lot of uncertainty about kind of what the regulatory situation is going to look like, and now with retailers like Tiger Direct and Overstock.com coming on board, it seems like this is really an important issue. Did we actually get any clarity in these rulings?
So what the rulings touch on, the R001 pertains to miners, or at least is intended to pertain to mining. And really it's trying to answer the question, under what circumstances does a miner or a mining pool become a money transmitter? They've tried to delineate those circumstances so that people can decide how to structure their business and their business activities to avoid money transmitter status, because as we all know, registering as a money transmitter is quite expensive in terms of compliance. R002 is quite similar. It just applies the same logic in a different way, or not in a different way, but to a different area. It's specifically dealing with traders or people who are engaged in trading on their own behalf. But ironically, it ends up also considering software manufacturers. And we've been talking, obviously we haven't had too much time to discuss R002. We weren't really prepared for it. At least those of us on the committee weren't aware that it was even being brewed up. But what it does do is it seems to purposely answer the question, under what circumstances might a software developer become a money transmitter by virtue of their business activities?
Based on your preliminary investigation of this, are there any obvious business models out there that used to be okay, but under these new rulings are, off the table?
We're actually quite pleased with how this is shaping up. I see it in the opposite way, where there were business models that were clearly in question that we weren't sure if they subjected people to potential registration or not. And I can describe a few of those. And these have really, I'd say these two rulings have cleared up what you can do to ensure that you don't fall under that ambiguity and that it's a little bit more clear cut. So let's start with miners. As of their earlier ruling, last year's ruling that came out in March, it wasn't clear. It was essentially implied that unless a miner is using the proceeds from their mining to buy goods or services, that they might be engaging in money transmitting just by selling the proceeds, just by converting, for instance, Bitcoin into a fiat currency, call it US dollars. We weren't sure if that was an unintended result, but it was certainly a severe result, right? If a miner becomes a money transmitter just because they convert their BTC to US dollars, then really, for all intents and purposes, most miners would have to register as money transmitters, as money services businesses with FinCEN, and that seemed like the wrong result. So what R001 has done is it has clarified that and has essentially said, as long as you have a fractional ownership structure, say it's a mining pool that's a limited partnership, for instance, if you are just paying bills on behalf of the limited partnership or servicing debts on behalf of the limited partnership, as long as you're paying on behalf of a limited partnership, you're okay. You're not engaged in money transmitting. Where there is still ambiguity is the question, you have a lot of like cloud hashing, for instance. It's a sort of industry or at least business that's growing up that's distinct from mining, the manufacture of mining hardware, and distinct from individuals or even pools that are closely organized mining on their own behalf. The question is cloud hashing, is the process of mining on behalf of other people and paying out the proceeds where there's no clear legal relationship between the two parties, is that money transmitting? And that's really, I would say, the only significant remaining ambiguity. FinCEN has otherwise answered the question. They basically said that how a user obtains virtual currency is not material to the legal characterization of whether or not they're transmitting money, right? Whether or not they need to register as an MSB under the BSA. So it essentially is applied the same way for both miners and traders. It doesn't matter how you get the currency. What matters is what you do with the currency. And so long as you, I would say loosely, dispose of the currency on your own behalf in furthering of your own interests or interests of, for instance, limited partners in a limited partnership, you're not engaged in money transmitting. Where people do become money transmitters is if they are using the currency on somebody else's behalf. And so they've made that quite explicit, which for us, it's the best outcome, I think.
So this is really a conversation then about agency, right? If you have the ability to, if you're acting on your own behalf, then you're fine. But if you're acting as the agent for someone else, then therefore you are a money transmitting agent, and therefore you need to be registered. Is that about the logic?
I would say that's a great characterization of it. So the question is, when are you an agent instead of somebody that's acting directly on behalf of, say, a pool? If the pool is structured in a way where it's, I would say, legally apparent that it's one entity, then there's no real issue. The issue arises when the association is more loose. So if the agent is obviously an agent, then they're perhaps going to run into problems.
Okay, so that, I think I agree with you. That sounds like it's actually pretty good. It clarifies a lot of things. It makes it so that it doesn't matter how you got the coins in the first place anymore. It just matters that you have them and how you are going to use them. So that makes it much easier to apply these standards across the board. Let me ask you this. There are a lot of agencies that are all kind of vying to regulate Bitcoin. Do you think that, how much of a reach does this FinCEN ruling have?
FinCEN's really only addressing the immediate question of, how do people become compliant? How do people make sure that whatever their business model is, that they're not opening themselves up to potential criminal prosecution because they're not registered with the appropriate agencies under the BSA? And this is all obviously just in the United States. We're not really sure yet what other countries are going to have to say about this. But we are now, fairly confident that FinCEN's goal was really, I think they have accomplished it now, was really to give us enough guidance so that people could, with good faith, go out and establish the compliance procedures that they need, or change their business model if they have to, so that they are compliant under the regs. In R001, one of the things that FinCEN did was they said that Bitcoin mining itself imposes no obligations on a user to send the mined Bitcoin to another person or place for the benefit of another. So that's the precise rule that they've delineated. It's only once you're sending Bitcoin or virtual currency to another person or place on behalf of a third party that you potentially become a money transmitter.
There is one other piece of information that we're kind of waiting on that's getting to be increasingly timely, and that is how in the United States the IRS is going to deal with Bitcoin holdings and Bitcoin gains. I'm sure that you have some sort of holdings in Bitcoin, and I'm curious if you think that that's something that's going to get solved before April 15th, or if we're just kind of going to go through this in limbo.
I would be surprised if it does, although I have to say that I'm not all that current on what the IRS has to say about this. I'm sure that Patrick probably has a pretty fair idea, but we haven't in committee meetings discussed this yet. It's tough to get through the morass of potential, regulatory issues. We have this whole universe of potential issues, and we literally just have to identify one at a time. What we've been trying to get our arms around is this money transmitter issue. And then next, we're moving on to money laundering. Money laundering is obviously a big issue because it poses a threat to the entire industry. If the regulators perceive virtual currencies as opening up an opportunity for criminals to use the virtual currency to launder money, then we need to help them come up with ways, if in fact that's true, assuming that's true, we need to help them come up with ways to curtail the potential abuse of virtual currencies in the arena of money laundering. So really that's our next focus. All this stuff takes a little bit of time on our end. We're volunteering to do this. One of the things I do want to say, though, is that with regards to the money transmitting, we're going to publish our position that kind of incorporates these ideas and articulates what we think about them. Early next week, we will post our position on these FinCEN rulings. And then the public will have about 2 weeks, we're thinking, to give feedback and comment on our position. I mean, it's difficult. It's kind of a majority process, and we don't expect to ever reach a consensus, but we'll try to incorporate the public's concerns before we present the position to the board, to the committee, and then the model is supposed to work such that the board will then either affirm our position and then publish it publicly on behalf of the foundation, or they'll propose amendments. So that's kind of how this process will work. One of the things that's interesting about R002, R002 delves into the software question. When does a software provider become a money services business? It looks like even if the software is used in the activity of money transmitting for the software provider's customer. So if the software provider's customer uses the software to then go and transmit money, that does not make the software provider itself a money services business. So there's this clear delineation that FinCEN has created. And this is a bit surprising to us. If you separate these two activities, the money transmitting from the software development side, then the software developer has clearly a protection against being categorized as a money transmitter and requiring money services business registration. That was unexpected. And I think specifically in the context of ATMs, it's a great result for our industry, because what FinCEN has done is they've established this almost safe harbor where if a company is structured so that all that they're doing is providing, for instance, ATM software, the companies that use the ATM software will have to be registered clearly as money services businesses. But the software providers themselves probably won't have to be. And that, for us, we think it's a fantastic result. One thing I do want to add also, Patrick Merck's opinion is pretty useful on this, and I think it's a good take. What Patrick says about FinCEN's ruling is regardless of what the consequences of the rulings are immediately and how many gaps there are in them, the good thing that we can take from this is that FinCEN is essentially establishing that if you ask for clear guidance, they'll try their best to give you such guidance. So if you have a business model, you think it's operating in what you perceive to be a gray area, just go ask FinCEN for guidance, and they've demonstrated here that they're willing to give it. And that's, I think, the most positive thing that we can take from the rulings.
Well, overall, it sounds like it's a very positive ruling. A lot of clarity there. You're right. I mean, the software thing is huge. And it seems like because of the ambiguity about whether or not these wallet applications have been legal, it seems like that is a reason that's really been holding back adoption on platforms like Apple, where they're a little bit risk averse. It seems like this is all just moving in the right direction and that we're continuing to see these rules get settled. So it's not so much that rules are good or bad. It's just that finally there are some rules.
Exactly. And they will fill them in for us also as we proceed. So as an entrepreneur, your goal really is just to determine what are the existing rules and then try to anticipate maybe where those rules will end up. And in the beginning, it was difficult for anybody to do that. And we actually see our role, the Law and Policy Committee, our role is to help people interpret the rules and help people, in fact, anticipate where they're going to end up. We had been able to anticipate R001, the ruling on mining. We weren't prepared for R002, but we're pleasantly surprised by it. But going forward, if entrepreneurs, people who are starting their own businesses, if they have questions about where their business model falls, on which side of the fence, is it, money transmitting or not, they can do two things. They can come to the foundation's website and look at what we have to say about how we interpret the existing rulings. And then if they still have, in their minds, uncertainty, they can always petition FinCEN for a ruling. And I think congratulations to Russ Smith for doing that in the context of mining, because that one move, I think, did more to clarify the ambiguity and the uncertainty in the industry than anything before it. So we're really happy that the timing of it was great for us and for the industry as a whole. I do want to add one other thing, Adam. We are releasing an application in the next couple of weeks. For the beta version will come out in the next couple of weeks. The application will be called A Bit Bizarre, and it is kind of a mix between Craigslist and an eBay application for Bitcoin. So it will be a Bitcoin marketplace. Expect that to come, the beta version to be released within the next 2 weeks.
And that's a project you're doing with the Monte Rosa partners?
It actually isn't. That's a separate project that we got involved with originally. It was my girlfriend's idea originally, and then we started looking for financing to get it funded. So it's ended up becoming an entirely different enterprise separate from Monte Rosa, but definitely I think an interesting concept. And I think within the next 2 or 3 weeks, it'll be pretty exciting because we'll have something to contribute to the ecosystem that doesn't yet exist. So it's going to be pretty exciting for us.
Is there a domain for that for people who want to find more information, or will there be one?
There is, yes, abitbizarre.com, and bizarre being spelled B-A-Z-A-A-R, abitbizarre.com.
Ryan Deming, thank you very much for your time and for updating us on this issue.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make 2-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.
Would you like to buy Bitcoin? Cash into Coins provides the fastest, easiest, and safest way to buy Bitcoin in the United States. Simply place an order online, deposit cash at any supported bank, and relax. Cash into Coins will verify your deposit and send out your Bitcoin within 24 hours. Join tens of thousands of people who have purchased from Cash into Coins. What are you waiting for? Buy your Bitcoin today. Go to cashintocoins.com. That's cashintocoins.com.
We have with us today a mystery guest speaker, and I have to tell you, it's not because we wanted it to be a mystery, it's because we were coerced into doing so by the law of the land. This is a man who has done more for alternative currencies and foundation work than just about anybody else on the planet, and he has suffered greatly for it, both personally, financially, and in just about every other way you can imagine. This is a man who has been characterized by the federal government as a unique type of domestic terrorist. Now, there's 4 laws on the books that tell you what a terrorist is, and all of those relate to violence. And he's unique because he's entirely nonviolent, and all of his work has followed that path of nonviolence in creating an alternative currency that took the United States by storm a decade before Bitcoin became popular. I give you Bernard von Nothaus, the creator of the Liberty Dollar.
I'm almost speechless. I did have some notes because in talking to people over the beers and dinners and everything else, I kept being asked a lot of questions. So what I want to do is breeze through a few housekeeping sort of issues and then really open the floor to mostly questions and answers, because I was out on tour for 10 years and I found that the most enjoyable and fulfilling part of that tour was answering people's questions. Since I'm not psychic, it's the way it happens. So first, before Joseph introduced me, I'd like to have a quick show of hands of who's heard about the Liberty Dollar before just now. Wow, really? Wow, and you came back for more, huh? Okay, I'm glad about that. I need to give you a disclaimer, and that is that because of my conviction, I'm out on an appearance bond, and I'm barred from selling any Liberty Dollars, or promoting Liberty Dollars, or marketing Liberty Dollars. I can breathe the word, but I can't do anything with them. So I just want you to understand, I know this is being recorded, that I'm not here to do any of those sort of things because I don't want to violate my appearance bond. I don't want to go to jail, period. Okay, so with that clear point in mind, I think probably the best thing to do is to give you a real quick outline for those that didn't hold up your hands. The Liberty Dollar dates back actually 40 years ago. On September the 11th, 1974, I experienced an epiphany that resulted in me writing 200 pages of automatic writing. You can look that up and Google it. And an outgrowth of that was an economic research paper to no value. Outgrowth of that was starting the first mint in Hawaii. And I served there as the mint master for all of 25 years. And that was my day job. That's what put me on Diamond Head and gave me a nice lifestyle, 2 children, and telly. But during that time, I had a burning desire going back to the epiphany and the revelations that I experienced there that could be boiled down to simply when there is a loss of value in the economic, political, or economic system, there is an equal and corresponding loss of value in those other systems. And certainly in 1974, we were seeing this, gas lines and the hostage. It was a bad year. But in any case, I was driven to research monetary issues, money in particular. I've always liked money. I think money is good. Kind of sound like DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. I kept researching, reading, and working on developing a currency that would be based on gold and silver. There's a lot of history for that. Gold and silver has been around 4,000 years. gave us the greatest prosperity the country's ever known, the world's ever known. The gold standard has been extremely good for the working class man and for the rich class too. I mean, everybody profited. Exactly the opposite of what we have today. Anyway, so over that 25 years, I developed this currency and, well, let's see, 1991, Paul Glover brought out the Ithaca Hour, and it was the first community currency. Paul had a lot of good intentions, but he didn't have any money, and so he didn't back it up with gold and silver, so it was a fiat community currency. For me, that didn't make it. I didn't like it, so I continued my work, but it was a warning shot across the bow that I needed to get my act in gear. Later on, 1995, Judy Shelton, a very well-known economist, wrote a book called Monetary Meltdown, and that was another shot across the bow. Beth Deiser, the editor of Current World, wrote a flaming article about the advantages of community currencies against government fiat money. So I really felt under pressure, you know. I said, God, I really got going here. I mean, these guys are passing me by, but they don't have the model. And God, I think we're looking for a monetary collapse. And what the hell are we going to do if we don't have any money? So in 1998, I brought out the Liberty Dollar. And I'll have to say that there's two major factors for its success. One was the internet. There was no way in hell that anybody, even with really deep, deep pockets, could possibly introduce a new currency without the internet. Because how would I find one monetary activist, for lack of a better description, over here in Iowa, and maybe two in California, and somebody up in New York, or down here in Miami? It was, I mean, this was 16 years ago, folks. There was not a lot of action happening in the monetary world at that time. There weren't any other choices. So the internet came along at ideal time. It was fantastic. It gave us the exposure because there's no way to be able to find critical mass. Of course, the other thing that was the biggest help, the other biggest help, was the government. The government was really supportive. A lot of times people ask me, wow, Bernard, you know, what's the government think? Read them off a long list of really great statements saying that it was legal and there was no law against it and things like that. I mean, we had a lot of confirmation from the government. Of course, that made the people that were on the fence a lot more comfortable knowing that, wow, this is really legal, much like what we're talking about in Bitcoin forums here. So with those two things, I went sailing off to just an extremely warm reception that kept growing. We're talking about rate of adoption. Of course, we never had that phrase back then because, duh, there wasn't anything to adopt, you know. But rate of adoption was doubling every year. I forget what it was the first year, but by 2008, which was the 10th anniversary, we were doing 5 million a year or something like that. So we started out just 1 or 2 people, and then it doubled and doubled and doubled, and it was fantastic. And really, we didn't have any marketing plan. We didn't spend a lot of money on marketing. Didn't have a lot of money for marketing. Basically, it was me driving around in my fat silver Cadillac, talking to people about how the government money is bad, how bad it is, and saying that Liberty Dollars, you notice I can't hold anything up here, folks, how good the Liberty Dollar was. And people just, they fell in love with it. Okay, so history. So we started in 98. That was good. We had some good years there. And then in 06, the U.S. Mint put out a warning saying that use, not possession, distribution, or sales, but use of the Liberty Dollar was illegal. Well, that wasn't a good thing. We tried to get them to claim that by filing a declaratory judgment, but that didn't get past the government's courts. So that didn't work. Then in 07 came the big bombshells when they raided the warehouse and raided the office, confiscated a total of about 11 tons of gold and silver, and some copper and some platinum, but mostly gold and silver. 11 tons. That was a lot. To give you an idea what that looks like, if you know what a pallet looks like, you know, a skid, 4 foot by 4 foot, 15 feet high is what that looks like. That was a lot. And that was bad because that backed up the paper and the digital currency. Shortly after that, 2 years after that, 2009, I was arrested. I self-reported. You know, it's the civilized thing to do. They call you, and would you come in and turn yourself in? I said, yeah, of course. You know, what am I going to do, right? You know, you get a request like that, you really don't deny it. But they did want me to come in right away, and I explained to them that it was late in the afternoon, I was on the road, and what am I going to do? Get there and cool my heels, you know, in a cell overnight? I said, it'd cramp my, you know, my clothes, it'd wrinkle my clothes. And I said, I'll come in tomorrow morning. Nice to argue with the FBI. So I was arrested, and I was released, and 2 years later, I was tried. The trial took 8 days. The jury took less than 2 hours and convicted me on all 3 counts of counterfeiting, fraud, and conspiracy. The chief, I use this word in the broadest context, expert that the government had stood up and said that the Liberty Dollar, and you have to go online to see what I'm talking about, looked like a U.S. quarter. I kid you not. Now, I don't know if you've seen quarters recently, but they have a guy on them. Liberty Dollars have a woman on them. The government doesn't have any $5 denominations. I mean, there's any case. I won't plead my case here because the case before the court, still before the court, because what's happened after I was convicted, usually when you're convicted, you know, you do a pre-sentencing and you go in and you get sentenced, and you're in federal prison about within 60 days is about the average. I was convicted on March the 18th, 2011. This is now 2014. It's been 3 years since I was convicted, and I still haven't gone to federal prison. Now, don't interpret that I'm anxious to go to federal prison. Although they do tell you that if you're going to do time, do federal time. That's comforting, don't you think? Any case, I don't know exactly what's happening with my case. We have motions before the court asking for an acquittal or a new trial. I think acquittal would be a good thing. But that hasn't happened yet, and I don't know when that's going to happen because I've been waiting every day. What is it? 3 years is over 1,000 days. I keep going, well, maybe today is going to be the day, you know. And, of course, it could be just get notification of come in for my sentencing, and after all this waiting around, I could maybe be thrown in jail. We just don't know. Let me take a look at a couple things I wanted to mention to you. I think the biggest point is the 2 driving forces behind the Liberty Dollar, which I think plays really quite well to a lot of the speakers that I heard here at the conference. And one is that there's something morally wrong with a government that rips off the people by their phony baloney fiat money. If I held you up, it would be a crime. The government holds you up, they call it inflation. I call it bullshit. This is... We shouldn't be losing our purchasing power. You know, when you want to go back and you look at value in currency, just think in your mind about what the price of gasoline was when you started driving. I'm 70, so I can tell you it was about 25 cents a gallon when I was starting to drive. And I had some really great times. There's nothing like being young and having a lot of money and driving around. But anyway, gas was 25 cents a gallon. So at that time, you could take in a fiat Federal Reserve note and you could get a silver dollar for it, and that was pretty cool. Now, a silver dollar was about 3/4 of an ounce. Now, I could buy 4 gallons of gas with that dollar. Well, that 3/4 of an ounce of silver today still buys 4 gallons of gas. It kind of tells you something. It isn't the fact that the price of metals are going up. It's the fact that the purchasing power of the dollar is going down. And anything that you can do to protect that, Bitcoin's included, of course, is good. And you have to. You can't possibly go through your life thinking you're not going to get old and you're not going to have any money. It's a very bad combination. I'm both old and I don't have any money. I could tell you it's not a good combination. So you don't want to follow me at all. I don't imagine any of you would follow me. But then again, you wouldn't be the mint master for 25 years and all that other stuff either. You know, so the other thing is my concern about society in general. My concern is that we're looking for a collapse of the economy. That was my concern 25 years ago. Actually, it was my concern 40 years ago when I wrote my first economic research paper. And it remains my concern today. If you look back on what happens when the government hyperinflates the dollar or hyperinflates the currency, it is nothing but bad news, and the consequences are severe. And if you want to look at another example, matter of fact, only one other example is when the whole global economy, at least the global at that time, failed. It was a total disruption of society, civilization in general. What would that case be? When Rome hyperinflated their denarius into oblivion, much like our favorite U.S. government is doing today, and it failed. All you have to do is think about the next 500 years, which were known as the Dark Ages. Yeah, they were dark, all right. They didn't have any money. People didn't have enough to eat. Next 500 years, they romanticized it as medieval. Oh, that was wonderful. Why? Well, because by this time, 500 years, that's 33 generations? I mean, that's a lot of people. I mean, that's a long time. The next 500 years, by this time, society had been driven to estates, and people were living on people's property, and they were sharecroppers, basically, and they had enough to eat, and that's why that was romanticized. That was good compared to the previous 500 years. And we had the next 500 years, which we're at the end of right now. God knows where we're going, but you've got to protect your money. And that's what I strive to do with the Liberty Dollar. A Liberty Dollar was nonprofit. I wasn't in it for the money. I made a bunch at the Royal Hawaiian Mint, and I used that money for what I thought was a good cause. Obviously, it was too good. A couple statistics for you. The Liberty Dollar was initially issued at a $10 face value when silver was about $5 an ounce. That's pretty understandable. You got markup and you got distribution costs, and actually we distributed it at $7.50 if you bought it in bulk. So that was $2.50 that we squeezed out of every one of the little pieces of silver. So that wasn't a whole lot of juice there. Silver moved up, so Liberty Dollar moved up to the $20 base, and then it moved up some more, moved up to the $50 base. So what happened? Well, that meant that the Liberty Dollar increased by 500%. This was wonderful. You know, when people bought the 10s and we moved up to the 20, they turned them in. They got 20s in place of the 10s. They doubled their money. Boy, we didn't have any trouble making that sale. People were ranting and raving and lining up and flooding us with Liberty Dollars to get reminted. Thing is that it appreciated 500%. Almost sounds like Bitcoin sometimes, huh? And then, at the same time, those same 10 years, Bushwhacker in the White House, he decimated the dollar, and it lost 50% of its purchasing power. The 1913 dollar had already depreciated down, so we only had 4%. Bushwhack drove it down to 98%, okay, of the purchasing power of the 1913 dollar. And so if you average those two together, the overall differential between private, voluntary currency versus government, fiat, was 1,000% difference. Why did the government come after me? It could have been I was just too popular, too successful, too noisy. I don't know. We were having a great time.
This is Chris Joseph bringing you news on Next, the first true second-generation cryptocurrency for February 11th, 2014. The Next software is now into its 0.7 version, which features completely refactored code and a new method for storing local blockchain data. The current release also features a fix for a cryptographic bug uncovered by Jesse James, the same person who found errors in blockchain.info in August of last year. Today is also the day that Next's decentralized asset exchange is released for public testing. Built on the foundation of the colored coins concept, the Asset Exchange lets Next users issue and trade assets tied to any other commodity, including Bitcoin. For more info, head to nextcrypto.org or mynxt.org. And stay tuned for more news on Next in the next Let's Talk Bitcoin broadcast.
I want to thank everybody here that has participated. How about a few questions?
Hey, how you doing? I'm Bradford.
Hey, Bradford. How's it going, man?
Going good.
Yeah.
I have a question. It's your Liberty Dollars. They were 1 ounce fine silver, correct?
Well, actually, we did a 1 1/2 and a 1/4 and a 1/10. And we also did it in gold and silver.
Okay, for the purpose of my question, I'm just going to refer to your 1 ounce rounds.
Okay.
What exactly was it that gave your 1 ounce Liberty dollar more value than, say, for example, a Canadian maple leaf?
Well, it has more value because it functions in the marketplace. Now, you mentioned the maple leaf. So let's talk about the Silver Eagle, the U.S. Silver Eagle. Okay. Now, the U.S. Silver Eagle, what's the denomination on that piece?
It does say $1.
It says $1. So now, today, for example, or back then, it said $1 also, right? And back then, it was, let's say it was $5 or so. Well, you can't buy metals at spot price, and you're sure in hell not going to buy a government piece at spot price because they're in it for the money. Okay, the premium on the Silver Eagles and the silver maple leafs are higher than private minted 1 ounce silvers. You can get Sunshine Silver rounds at half the premium that you can get government silvers for. Okay, so they're way up here, but doesn't make any difference. What are you going to do? You're going to pay maybe $5 or $6 for an ounce of silver, right? At least, and you can use it for $1. Duh. Do you see anything wrong with this economic model? Do you think the government has their head in a dark place? There's no doubt about it. Does that answer your question?
Good enough. Yeah.
Okay. I did it because the market accepted it. And because there are no $6, $7, or $8 or $9 bills, coins, or anything else out there. Plus the fact that you got to spend money for dies. That means you got to have a model that has wings on it into the future. Because you put up a lot of money, you want to make sure that those dies are going to have a lifespan. So if you put it at $6, you get a blip because the Saudis sold off something or otherwise you did something, then you get a blip. Well, you're out of business. I had to pick a figure. And it's actually a big concern on my part. But I knew it wasn't going to be 6 because it's too low, or 7. So maybe 9, but if I'm going to do 9, hey, listen, Fed's got a $10 bill, Okay, next question.
Hey, Bernard.
Yes, sir.
My name's Jim Ray. I was a competitor of Bernard's, and at first when I met him, I thought, like this gentleman's question, basically, I thought, okay, he's either a schemer or a scammer. He's like a terrible person. And I followed him around and realized that, no, he's actually a great friend and a really honest person, and he's got a huge amount of character. And I would encourage those of you in the Bitcoin community, you don't have to make friends as well as I did with Bernard with your competition, but meet your competition and treat them as humans, because you'll be surprised. There's some really great people around here. Anyway, my question to Bernard, I guess it's the same as last night. What the hell? How could a jury have done this? Have any of the jurors come up to your lawyer crying or anything like that? Because they should have.
Oh, you got to be out of your mind. No. We haven't heard from the jury, and we don't want to. After the guilty verdict, I don't give a about this jury too much,
Google jury nullification, folks, in here.
Hi, my name is Noy. Prior to some of today's options, if you wanted to protect yourself against inflation, you'd buy gold. My understanding was that purchasing power goes down, the value of gold should go up, which is not exactly what we're seeing today. So with all this coming out in the news, that now we're understanding that certain entities are manipulating the value of gold.
If you're not reading GATA, you're not being kept informed. GATA.org.
So I just wanted to know what your take on that was.
The take on
gold value being manipulated, like I understand.
Oh yeah, listen, it's always been manipulated, always. I stand here in face of GATA that GATA tells us, and it's gospel, that the market is manipulated. But guess what? All the markets are manipulated. The fact is that during the 50s and the high times of the Royal Hawaiian Mint, when we were buying lots of gold and silver, we were constantly getting slammed because we had to buy something. So, okay, well, let's see, it's market, we're going to think about it, read the newsletter, okay, and then we make a purchase, and what happens? The price goes down. Why? Because the Russians were doing backdoor dealing during the 90s. Later on in the earlier 90s, it was the Saudis. They had a lot of gold, so they would dump a bunch of gold, drive the price down, then buy double the amount at a cheaper price and rip everybody off. So this has been going on for a long time. The government's making a really big effort right now to control the gold market because they've got to control the interest rates. Don't you understand? If they let interest rates get out of control, then the whole thing collapses. They can't let that happen.
Thank you.
As far as the Royal Hawaiian Mint, I spent a year in Hawaii. Was that associated with the States, or was that through Honolulu, through the Royal department,
Mint.
their White House, because in Honolulu they had electricity before the White House. They were advanced there.
Right. As a matter of fact, the Iolani Palace was the second place in the United States to have electricity. In any case, about the Royal Hawaiian Mint, for Pete's sakes, I think you can gather from my tone and my conviction here that it sure in hell would not be a state organization. The only thing I've ever done with a state is when I enlisted, and that was a long time ago. Okay, no, it's a private organization, private minting, dedicated to commemorating Hawaiian precious metals. And we didn't go to anybody. No, I didn't call my mama either, you know. You're welcome. We do whatever we damn well please. Don't you got that? You know, private, private, private. You do whatever you want to in private. Okay, you got a question?
Hi, my name is Stu. Thanks for the fantastic speech, by the way. My question is, do you have any advice for all the entrepreneurs here in the room and maybe watching who are active in private digital currencies?
Kick. You know, I think the Bitcoin model is extremely enticing. Academically, I could tell you that I think it falls short on two different points, if I may add that as the monetary architect. One of the points has to do with redeemability. If you go back and you look at different monetary models, it's always good to have something that is physical. All you have to do is just look at yourself or your neighbor next door. Guess what? We are physical people. And we may love, but damn, sex is good, you know? So you got to get physical. You got to get Bitcoin physical in some particular way. And my advice there would be something like marrying the hottest new currency, that'd be Bitcoins, with the oldest, most successful currency, and that'd be gold. Some way to do gold and Bitcoin together, maybe as a card, would be a really interesting dynamic model. Another one is usage. And you've talked about it, everybody's talked about it. I'm going to add my 2 cents here. Usage is really, really important. And there again, a card, if you could put a card, marry Bitcoin to a MasterCard so it could be used anywhere MasterCard is, it would explode the Bitcoin and give it a much larger base and much more security if everybody was using it. I think that would be a very hot combination because what are you going to do? You're going to increase usage, which is going to increase demand, which is going to increase prices. Means we're all going to make a lot more money. This is a good formula. So that's the 2 things I'd like to add.
Hey Bernard, Bruce Fenton from
hi.
Financial. How you doing? Thank you very much for your speech. It was great. So I noticed your legal defense fund key on here, and I hope people donate. But I wanted to ask, what else can people do to help you? Is there things we can post, letters we can write, anything else? What else can we do to help you?
Something that you can do if you want to be kept informed is you could sign up for the monthly newsletter. I have published a newsletter ever since October of 1998, which chronicles the ins and outs and ups, downs, convictions of the Liberty Dollar and me personally. And you can go to libertydollarnews.org and you can sign up. It's free. It only comes out once a month. I promise I'm not going to send you anything else. Too lazy to do that. But you can be kept informed there. And what was the question in particular before I got off on that rant? Oh, help me. Oh, God. Well, I don't know. Somebody bought me a lot of drinks last night. That was a hell of a help. Man, I haven't drank that much. This has been a good conference. I haven't drank that much in a long time. Actually, I did find 4 books. They're in a bag over there that I wrote. I wrote a 500-page thesis on the Liberty Dollar. Matter of fact, it's titled The Liberty Dollar Solution to the Federal Reserve. 500 pages, it's 5th anniversary, and I have 4 copies. I can accept Bitcoins. Matter of fact, I'll probably only accept Bitcoins. If you want to make a donation, that would be greatly appreciated. It's been pretty bleak being out of work for, let's see, I'm going on 5-6 years now. And particularly, it's frustrating because the government took everything. So it's the usual government economic suppression. They take everything, and then you're supposed to be able to defend yourself. And, eating is still good. And drinking is still good.
Are they going to gift wrap your 11 tons of gold and silver to give back to you after your acquittal?
Eventually. But they got to sentence me first. A large part of that metal that they confiscated, unfortunately, is not mine. That belongs to, there was about 250,000 people involved with Liberty Dollar. So it wasn't any penny anything. We distributed somewhere between 65 and 85 million Liberty Dollars. That was a pretty engaging business model. But unfortunately, a good share of that were warehouse receipts. And so the silver's being held in the warehouse. So when they raided the warehouse, they took everybody's silver. So I'm out here officially as the campaign person to get that property returned. Even if I'm convicted and I go to prison, it's still not my property. It's a wrongful seizure. But the social consequences of the government's acts are horrendous. People have lost their homes. They lost their business. There's been a murder. There's been a couple suicides. You know, these are all friends of mine that I know and love, and they have suffered a lot. And anyway. So they will have to cough it up sooner or later. Oh, I was going to say one last thing about appreciation. You know, appreciation is really good. Give you an idea on Liberty Dollar. We issued one, 06 or 07 or something. We issued one, and it was $20. And we probably sold it to the distributor for someplace around $15. Silver was probably $12 at the time. And so before eBay barred sales of Liberty Dollars because it's counterfeit and they can't allow contraband to be sold on eBay. So in the heydays of that, somebody put one of their Liberty Dollars up on eBay. And I want you to think about the answer to this question for just a second. How much do you think an item that originally sold for $15, had a face value on it of $20, and a few years later sold on eBay? Just get an idea about, now this is numismatics, so just think about, well, what do you think? Maybe, did it double? You know, wow, that would have been a lot. I mean, because you would have bought it and sold it within a couple of years, double your money, that's pretty good. Whatever it is, I want you to double the figure that you got in mind. Then I want you to double it again, maybe tenfold it, I don't know. It sold for $1,900 on eBay. I don't have any control over eBay, so here is an item that we distributed. That's the type of support that the Liberty Dollar has enjoyed, and I've enjoyed visiting with you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to episode 83 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Ryan Deming was produced by Adam B. Levine and edited by Matthew Zipkin. Mystery Guest was captured by Steve Malagodi of Spectacular Sound at the North American Bitcoin Conference in January 2014 and edited by Adam B. Levine. Satoshi Square London was captured and provided by IamSatoshi.com. Music was provided by Jared Rubens and General Fuzz. Questions or comments? Email Adam at Let's Talk Bitcoin. Have a good one.
Trading session starting right now. We're going to have another trading session. Can I have the sellers identified? We've got a seller over there. Lee, put your hand up. We've got a seller here.
Potential buyer. Potential buyer.
Buyer here. Seller over there, Michael. Seller over there. Seller over here. Seller over there. A buyer there. We've got a buyer here. Okay.
Opening bell.
Offer. Opening bell. Ring. Offer. 535.
500 for £100 worth.
500 bid.
510.
1 bid.
510 for a whole Bitcoin.
Trade. Are you done? There, you're done.
Trading for what? One Bitcoin.
Trading at 510.
510, one Bitcoin trades.
One Bitcoin trades at 510.
I'll pay 500.
500 bid.
For 100.
525 offers.
525 offer.
525 offers.
What's your bid? 500 bid.
I want to sell 0.18 bitcoins.
0.18, okay, what price?
It's
£525.
£100.
500 on the bid. £500.
Did you say 500 you're trading? If you want a bit more, shout it out.
Okay.
Not amount, great.
Are you 500?
Fuck, I'm confused, man. How does this work?
You and capital markets don't go together, my friend. You're not supposed to be involved in this.
He's offering 525. He's buying.
Okay.
520. 520 off.
520. Yeah, 518.
518.
18.
518 off.